Hello. How's it going, friends? Elk is certainly having a week, but now we get to paint, and that's gonna make it all better. Uh, then in a couple days we get Desert Bus, and I can just lay on the couch and do nothing but watch Charity. It's gonna be great. Merlin, when have I not overdone it? That's like my whole thing. But yeah, I'll try and take care of myself and all that good stuff. Do it, coward. So yeah, today we're just gonna take it easy and do some terrain painting and dink around on some of these Kitbashes I still have floating about. And I don't know. I've got some. What did I just prime up? Some Tyranids down in the basement I just primed up. I think those would be pretty cool to do come Saturday morning. Well, how far away from Alberta is Michigan really? Just roll it into one big trip. So we're gonna give this chest here a nice thin coat of oak brown from Army Painter. Never been a big fan of Army Painter because their paints come naturally already so thin, pigment wise. But I think it'll work for this. Just gonna lay this on pretty thick. Try and get in all of these grooves here. 3D printers aren't entirely great for making like character models, at least not the FDM type, which are the ones I have. However, they are excellent for doing wood grain or concrete structures because the natural ribbing that it creates when it fuses the layers together really works well for those textures. Because I don't know how well you can see that, but you know, it just blends so nicely in there to that wood grain. So yeah, gonna hit some of these chests here with this nice brown. We've got some bone white for these marble pillars. Some metallics for the latch pieces. And I have no idea what I'm going to use these for because they're not 100% like sci-fi terrain. I don't know how well they'll fit into like D&D, but maybe if I can convince my friends to play Frostgrave with me, that'd be cool. Frostgrave is a war game played with D&D miniatures. So you've got your one wizard, and then you take some troops of like archers and warriors and barbarians and stuff like that. And those are your main fighting force, while your wizard sticks back and casts spells. You're fighting over like treasure objectives and stuff like that. It's a neat idea. I've never gotten a chance to play it, but I've always wanted to. Yeah, sort of like Fire Emblem, but IRL. You'd probably enjoy it. I don't know how we could fit like romance subplots into it or something, but we could try. Online. I wonder how you would do that. Yeah, normally I'd say tabletop simulator, but with them being so kind of awful about their moderation standards around the LGBTQ community, not a fan of supporting them. Could probably do it with Roll20. Be a bit clunky, but doable. No, Merlin, everything is a rhythm game. Get with it. You're not the only one. Although I think half of the sucking I get is from playing on like the LCD screens, and they just have the worst audio sync. So even when I hit it right as it's lining up, I'm actually delayed by like 50 milliseconds or something like that. You know, I would have thought that being in band would have made you better at rhythm games. But what do I know? Never tried Beat Sabers. I've got a Vive rig, but it just gives me the worst headaches. Hey Randus, how you doing? Today we've got some terrain pieces that I've done up. Just some little scatter pieces for like light cover and stuff. That would fit more into a fantasy setting, but it's better than nothing for like Warhammer. And of course, we still got some Kitbashes that I made from bits I got online for cheap. So we'll probably do some of that too. Hmm. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. The the Space Wolves in particular grew up on a death world called Fenris, I believe, and they had to constantly fight like dragons and stuff like that. So why not? Yeah, he always seems to pick right when I'm streaming to start barking at nothing. It's impressive. He hasn't enjoyed the past 2 days since I've been mostly eating delivery food. Yeah, Miller? Did you protect us? You being a good boy over there? You're being a loud boy at the very least. Miller gets his fancy wet food and his pig ears, so he can't complain. I mean, he's still going to, but he shouldn't. So, anybody else working on any crafts tonight? Or are we just chilling out today? It's a good day to chill out. Frankly, I'm considering taking tomorrow off from work. When has that ever stopped you from crafting, Merlin? You've got your tablet. Oh, world building's a form of crafting. Personally, I've always seen D&D DMing as kind of like writing a story. You don't actually have all of the parts filled out yet, but that's where your players come in. It's like you're writing a story together, you're giving it the bones, and they're giving it the main characters. Of course, it always ends up coming out like Guardians of the Galaxy with how silly people act, but you know. Yeah, a story of about 4 or 5 people trying to spite God at every turn. What's not to love? Really thinking with the methods that I utilize for painting, particularly with these translucent, very thin paints, I might want to stop doing this prime black highlight in white and gray and switch to more of a like a base in medium gray or light gray, then do washes to bring out the shadows more instead of trying to rely on the black priming, just so that overall the entire model comes out a little bit brighter, because I feel like that works just a little bit better with these paints. Because it's easy to make value levels go down, but it's hard to bring them up without working over things with an opaque titanium white. It's either that or I need to invest a lot more time in mid-tone highlighting. Hey, Julie. Who you calling a whale? We're just painting up some terrain right now. Just a little bit of warm-up for brush control practice, since it's probably been a solid week since I last did any painting, really. But, and I think we're going to work into some of our Kitbashes here. Put some nice deep red on some Space Boys. 2 days left, Julie. Are you ready for this? I know I am. Oh, good, we're at the part where everyone's doing deep screaming exercises. You know, Merlin, every time you show off those emotes, it tempts me just a little bit more to go sub to that person, if only to get those emotes, because they are great. Much appreciated. Oh yeah, the other fun thing that's been happening in Yalk's life, aside from the medical stuff, is getting that 3D printer back up and running once I'm done With these brush strokes here, I'll show you guys some of the terrain I've printed out. Hopefully we'll get to use it pretty soon. And a lot of my friends into Warhammer here. Just need to actually make some time to have a battle. Try not to think about how much money I've already spent on the game without even playing it yet, but you know. Who needs to be fiscally responsible? It's 2022. Yeah, somebody else can be an adult for us. Just a few more strokes on here. And get in only the divots that really are going to be seen. Yeah, good enough. So yeah, I've been doing up a lot of 3D printing. Got some nice crate stacks, tire piles. Got a pump station. Suppose it'd help if I put some like models against them to show, yeah. Most of these are just chest high walls, but some sort of storage barrel. Broken down jersey barriers, of which I've actually already painted up a few. Glued a few of these together. Give them some nice concrete look, some mud splatter, some blood splatter. So, you know, just some good scattered terrain walls. This one I'm really happy with, this like coolant turbine. Really appreciate how much detail I can get out of it now that I've tightened the belts on the X and Y axes there. Little fuel tank. Shipping container. Oh yeah, mud and blood. Can't have one without the other in war. But yeah, it's gonna be fun painting all these up. Mostly I'm just gonna hem with the airbrush for a base coat and then do some detail painting over them, just slap them out as quick as I can. But they should make a nice addition to the battlefield. Alright, I think we're pretty well warmed up. This terrain can always be done off screen. So let's get into it with some of our spacey boys. Oh yeah, and of course, the new addition to the painting club here, my little vortex machine. Because why shake it manually when you can just have a robot do it for you? Oops. Who says I haven't already, Julie? Yes, yes, I vortexed it. I imagine it's like when you get your first pair of uh, like cooking tongs and you don't clack them like a crab. Clack, 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 clack. You gotta clack them to make sure they work right. Alright, so let's slap this guy on with some nice red. I think we're gonna play a little fast and loose with this. For the most part, because this is a junk model that I got off eBay for like a 60% discount off of normal prices because it came in, bits and pieces. And I ended up actually having to put on a head from an entirely different model set because that's all I had around. But I think he looks cool. I'm gonna make a Kitbash Legion of Chaos Space Marines that are basically just, scavengers, taking whatever weapons they can find from wherever on the battlefield, taking armor from people they've killed, all that good stuff. And if their armor here looks a little splotchy and dirty, well, that's just because they're Chaos Marines and they don't care about looks. They aren't going out and having parades to the might of the Emperor. These guys are fighting for the glory of chaos. I love being covered in mud, blood, and dirt. Yeah. Law. Ugh. What does it go for? The growth of corn, the blood god. You mean the acclaimed series Dad of Boy? He hasn't. Sacrilege. Actually reminds me of a a web comic that I used to read a lot. The punchline is machismo. Manly guys doing manly things. They haven't updated in probably 4 or 5 years now, but the the comic they ended on was a parody of the God of War game there, and how often he would be saying boy and do this, do that. I miss that comic. I saw. I haven't really been keeping up with games news lately, but one of the posters for God of War Ragnarok there has Thor with like a dad bod. Not gonna lie, it's kind of piqued my interest. Maybe you should stream it one of these days there, Merlin. I mean, if that's your jam. Obviously, don't do that if you don't want to, but somewhere in the back of my, oh, you've been watching a Let's Play, you're not playing it yourself. My bad. Kabaddi. Is that the Turkish oil wrestling, or is that something else? Indian Competitive Red Rover. That's a string of words I never thought I'd hear. Kratos tries not to kill everyone, does so anyways. I'm sure that'll hold up in the court of Valhalla. Yeah, that's have you ever seen Dale and Tucker versus Evil? The part where they're trying to explain to the sheriff that the kids were just throwing themselves into the wood chipper. Oh, that's a must watch there, Marlon. It's basically your generic horror movie with all of the tropes of, teenage kids go to the cabin in the woods and, some hillbilly weirdos stalk them from the forest. Except it's told from the point of view of the rednecks who really don't understand what's going on and are just trying to help them. Dale and Tucker versus the forces of evil, I believe it is. It's actually even starring Alan Tudyk of Firefight Aim there. Love any role I see him in. Well, I think we are almost past the part of base coding where everything looks blotchy and awful and getting into the part where it looks beautiful. Because thankfully, with the mix that I use, things dry pretty quickly, so we can go right back over them for the second quote right away to even things out. Yes, yes, posture check. I am a terrible shrimp man. Ah. And as soon as I am done with this base coat, I'm also going to hydrate myself because I'm a little parched. I am also on antibiotics right now, so I'm definitely going to, on the break, fill myself with delicious pickles. Fun fact, kids, antibiotics, while they do kill off dangerous bacteria that want to give you pneumonia and terrible infections and stuff, also kill off about 80% or so of your gut flora, which is about 8 pounds of your body, give or take, depending on how big you are, and are deeply important in your digestive system. But antibiotics do not care who they kill. So it's important when you are taking antibiotics for an infection or post surgery to load up your body on yogurts and pickles, sauerkraut, basically any naturally fermented food to ensure that you can replenish your gut flora with nice, healthy microorganisms before anything else tries to take its place. Because you do not want wild yeasts or anything like that taking its place. Otherwise, you end up with some terrible digestive syndromes. Yeah, I might end up ordering a probiotic capsule too, just in case. Can never be too careful with your digestive system. Hmm. Don't know what's causing this, but it seems like some gunky bits are flaking off of him. So that's neat. Granted, this is a Kitbash, so maybe this is like some loosened up green stuff that for some reason didn't get knocked off when I brushed the paint off, but we'll see. Come on, Randus, you know us. We don't sleep. I mean, despite our best efforts. We definitely want to sleep, but we don't. Well, I wish I could tell you, Marilyn, but I haven't looked at the IMDb page for Sandman yet. I don't actually know who that actor is. Interesting looking sort, though. Oh, they've already confirmed that they're doing another season. It's actually pretty recently. I follow Neil Gaiman on Twitter, mostly for his devastating clapbacks at jackasses on the internet, but also for updates on shows like Good Omens and stuff like that. Oh my god, you need to. It is such a good show. I mean, you're not wrong, Randus. I like to believe I'm not part of that 95%. I try to be a good boy. One of the nice things about doing up these Marines here is that on top of the fact that I don't care too much about them because they're Kitbashes and because they're chaosy, they the details are very often dark. So when you're talking about like these little manifold areas in the gaps of their armor, um, you know, metal bits on their backpacks and helmets, their trim, that's all often very dark colors. So you can very much just get away with slapping the base coat on everywhere, or if I weren't doing this on stream yet because I don't have a setup downstairs yet, I would just typically cover these all in a flat base coat with the airbrush, and then from there pick out the details very carefully. But since I'm using a brush, I'm just slapping it everywhere. Slap, 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 slap. We are almost done with this. Just going around making sure I'm hitting all the parts I can see. And with that, I'm going to say good for now, and we are going to take our hourly recommended break. So everybody, go ahead, get up, stretch, swap some fluids out. Make sure to take your medicine, if you have any medicine to take. And we will see you back here in about 5 minutes, or for my benefit, 6:48 my time. See you then. And we are back. Hope everybody had a nice good break. Took care of all the things you needed to. Remember to check your posture when you're sitting. Don't want any broken backs out there. I think we're gonna get right back into it with this guy again. Gonna take some oily steel, thin it a little bit with my contrast mix, which, granted, metallics really do not like it being thinned. They always get a little clumpy because, oh, well, thank you there, Fen. Welcome, Raiders. Just talking about how metallics do not thin well as we get ready to do some details on this Kitbashed um, Chaos Marine that I made from eBay parts and stuff I had laying around. Hope your stream went well. Yeah, we're just slopping some paint on some miniatures and having fun with it. Hey, Coyote. Anyone else not from Fen's community who's watching me right now, go ahead and give Fen a follow. She's a trans femme variety streamer. She does a lot of like Digimon and assorted video games. She has some great takes on modern economic theory. And they've got a great community over there, I think. Oh, certainly messy. But you did come in with some perfect timing because we did just get back from our break, so nothing but painting for the next hour here. And are you wrong about any of those points, Ben? Somebody's got rage about it. I certainly don't have the spoons for raging. No, I actually just picked this up off of Amazon. I think the makers are called like Jukochi or something like that. But it's actually cheaper than the Citadel holder, and it's got this nice handle on it, and these removable discs that make it really easy to just quickly swap between models you're doing. I definitely recommend giving them a look if you're interested in getting a new handle. Certainly helps my shaky ass hands. And if you end up, wanting more of their discs for use, It's basically just a hardwood dowel with a little bit of metal placed in the bottom, or a magnet. And it just works. Put them on to the put the model on them with just a little bit of poster tack. Makes it nice and easy to work with. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do the details of this guy all in this gunmetal. It's gonna take a few layers to do since I've thinned it down with gloss medium, but I think that nice, slow, even approach will look really well on these guys. Especially if we leave a little bit of that red showing through. Give a little bit more personality is the word I'm looking for. Because like I said, these guys very much scavengers for all of their parts and armor. So if things look kinda, dingy, out of place, rusted over, painted over, that just adds to the appeal. One thing I do dislike about buying partially assembled models, when it comes to these crevices, I'd much rather have them in bits so that I can take them off and put them back on at will with poster tack, so that I can get into these areas more easily without slopping my paint over. That said, as I keep repeating, these guys are meant to look a little grungy, so a little bit of slopped paint won't ruin it. But in general, I like to have more flexibility to do what I want. for these armor plates here in the back, just gonna slop this on nice and heavily. Part of the contrast medium that I make is Flow Improver, which contains a number of surfactants and other additives like this. It's called a drying retarder, which basically just means it makes the water inside the paint evaporate slowly, but the surfactants also reduce the surface tension in the paint. And the combined effect of that is when you slop it on heavily, it not only allows the paint to stay wet longer, but it allows it to spread out more and fall into crevices and stick to bits. So it means that if you slop it on heavily, it's not a death sentence for texturing or anything like that. You can actually get a nice effect with it still. So sometimes, the standard rhetoric is 2 thin coats, 2 or more thin coats, but every now and then 1 thick coat will also do something for you. And also, don't be afraid to experiment. Do something and try to understand why that thing you didn't work the way you wanted it to. Because if you just follow a tutorial and do everything exactly the way somebody else tells you to do it, have you really learned anything other than, well, if I do it this way, it will turn out this way? Gotta make mistakes, make them quickly, and make them such a way that you understand why the mistake happened. And from that, you can understand the process of fixing that mistake or not repeating it. Or sometimes a mistake isn't a mistake, it's actually an inspiration for a new process. Hey, SJ. Thanks for stopping by. Oops to you too. And give Sasha rubs. Oh, I'm on mute on your screen. I was about to say, have I been muted this entire time? How are people responding to me? Oh god. What does this even mean? Hey, Kuma. Thanks for stopping by as well. I'm just using on the process of learning, listening to sorted classical music, painting some little dudes. Oh yeah, you need your boot permits. Might end up getting boop audited. Yes, all the boops for Sasha and Kara. Such boopable faces. I don't think I say this enough. I do appreciate y'all coming and hanging out with me. It's really nice to be able to spend time with all of y'all. Even if I am just kind of talking at a screen while I paint, reading your responses, it's nice. Looking fancy. Alright, gonna put this down for a second. Let some of that paint dry. And while I'm at it, gonna take a sip of my water. Everybody else out there, hydrate too. It's good for you. And while you're hydrating, maybe grab yourself some of your medicine that you need to take. It's a good combination, water and meds. I think now we're going to go ahead and swap to some solid black. Just hitting it on the vortex right now. Make sure it's all shook up. There we go. This is not the brush I want. This is. Here we are. And we're going to load this nice dark black. This is a Vallejo black, so it's actually kind of on the cooler side of black. Sort of like a super, super navy blue. I think it'll work pretty well for what we want. Just gonna, with the broad side of our brush, start hitting these trims. Try not to get into any recesses or off the edge at all. Of course, try keyword. There are some pretty shallow ridges, in part because this is an old model. The new Primaris models definitely have more pronounced ridges. So do the Chaos Legionnaires. But this definitely isn't as easy as the newer models, but again, a little bit of grunchiness isn't the end of the world. Also doesn't help that this is a kit bash and there's a whole bunch of excess green stuff and CA glue swimming around in here. The key thing to remember, even when you're applying your paints thickly, is that you still need a little bit of water on the brush just so that they'll actually slide off. Otherwise, they just really want to stick to the bristles. So just dabbing your brush in a little bit of water before it goes into the paint will make a world of difference. And taking an extra few seconds to figure out your paint angle, too bad of an idea either. Because angle at which you brush changes drastically where the paint is going to end up. So make it easier on yourself rather than harder. Or do it on hard mode, whichever you prefer. I'm not your boss. And if I were your boss, I'd tell you to form a union. If I did do that, would that make me a good boss or a bad boss? Who can tell? What was that one television show you were, or comic series you were telling us about, Fen, where the boss realized that their employees didn't have a union and then told them basically, you've got the rest of the day off. I can't force you to do this, but you should create a union. Well, April, I hope I can send you over to a great thing later. 3 alternate universes deep. That's frankly impressive. Yeah, these bits of trim are coming out a bit messy, mostly because I just do not have a great raised surface to work from, but I also don't care too much. It's not like I'm putting in superb amounts of effort trying to get them to be as neat as possible. But once we're done with this black detailing, we're actually just going to hit this thing with a nice heavy wash anyways to really bring out the shadows and grunge it up anyways, so probably all just going to blend together. Well, hey April, if you ever come over Detroit way, got a mountain of plastic you can go ahead and try out. I'm putting together a large number of kill teams. I do not have a problem letting them out to be played with. I may have just ordered earlier this afternoon the Necron Combat Patrol box. You know, as a treat for myself. Yelp deserves a treat every now and then. Merlin, isn't that what you're doing right now? Fine, fine, we'll get a nice auditorium set up. Get me down in the center and you all looking down above me from the rafters. Oh yeah, Miller would definitely be going person to person, pressing his butt into their hips, being like, hey, hey, you want to rub this too, right? And I'm pretty sure for a lot of you the answer is yes, yes, you do want to rub his butt. Such a big floofy butt. But knowing Fenn's community, if they all got together in my in one area, they'd also be rubbing each other's butts. Kay already said that they were thirsty. She was not kidding. Fen, are you a bad influence or do you just attract like minds? Sure, Fen, let's go with that. That's definitely exactly what I said. No, Fen, it's Miller who's putting his hips on, or his butt on people's hips. How would I put my butt on your hips? Thirstbrain does what Thirstbrain wants. This is known. Alright. I think what we're gonna do next is go grab my wash. Toss a nice big glop of that out onto my palette here. Grab my thick brush, thick with 5Cs, and we are just gonna get all messy with it. Just cover this boy from head to toe. For anyone who hasn't painted much before, a wash is basically a paint with a lot of pigment and a lot of solvent, some surfactant in it, and not that much binder, so it's actually fairly thin. And what it does is it just really nicely flows into crevices and cracks thanks to capillary action. Really darkens up those areas, bringing out the details. Especially for war games and grim darky stuff like Warhammer. Grunginess of it. It's really aesthetic. Don't personally like it too much for like fantasy games because I feel like fantasy is bright and cheerful and colorful and doesn't do well with wash. So if you do wash down your fantasy miniatures, definitely go back over with another layer to brighten up the midtones. But for this, I'm not too afraid to slap on some null equivalent to just grunge it all up. Oh no. I mean, to be fair, you work at a university, and universities notoriously already have horrible internet. Yeah, we're just gonna really grease this boy up. Make him look like he's been down in the tar pits for a long while. And then we might come back through and do a little bit of dry brushing over top just to bring the highlights out a little more, but we'll see. See how this turns out. Now, one thing I'll eventually get around to doing is buying a set of oil paints and some mineral spirits and start creating my own oil washes. And how those are really nice is that they take much longer to dry, and because they're more of a lacquer based wash, you don't have to worry about them sitting on flat surfaces. So as you can see in the flats, it pooled a bit and it created the shadowing, darkening effect everywhere, and didn't limit itself just to its recesses. And sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you want it to be everywhere, but sometimes a lot of the time, you want it to be only in the recesses. So with a oil wash, once it's done drying into those recesses like you want to, you can take a Q-tip soaked in the just pure mineral spirits and use that, and it'll wipe off anything on the flats you don't want to be around. So it's very forgiving in that way. And you get nice, crisp, dark shadows like that. One thing I can do is that I can just go back over some of these flats with a little bit of water before it's fully dried. Just kind of lift some of it off so that doesn't really darken these shadows down too much, or darken these flats down too much. In fact, I might even pull out some flow improver, bring that onto the palette, use that to reactivate some of this too, help it flow a little bit better. Even though this is artist grade wash, sometimes it can use a little help. Typically, you wouldn't actually want to be doing what I'm doing right now, which is reactivating and pulling off the paint, because it creates textures. But I think it's kind of a stylistic choice in this model, because we're experimenting, we're getting grungy, we're getting freaky. Let's have fun with it. Let's make it look like he's covered in clumps of dirt and areas that might have gotten sprayed clean, but other areas that haven't. Let's see if we can take what's normally a negative of working with paint and turn it into a positive. You'll see, especially like on the metal, I really like doing washes on metal for this, because you can really pick out, if the camera would focus properly, you can really pick out a lot more of the detail, and it tones down that extra glossy nature of the metallic paint. Really gives it an oiled metal look. Alright, we're going to go ahead and let that dry. Then, while we wait for that to dry, I want to try out a concept that I've been thinking about for a little while. I'm going to grab myself one of my bottles of white paint and go for a little bit of a slightly off-white. I was actually going to go for the dead white, but I think this ivory actually looks better to me. We're going to hit that on the vortex. Give it about 10-15 seconds of shaking on either side, because paint likes to separate out. You do not want separated paint while you're painting. A little bit more. Still coming out pretty thin. Yeah, that's good enough. Then we're going to grab ourselves some matte medium. And what I want to do here is get this white paint kind of translucent and nice and thick, so that I can do some dry brushing. I'll bring up the value to a nice white, but if we make it translucent, then it'll still show color underneath, which will effectively do a bit of highlighting for us. Sort of like a reverse of the grisaille method we use all the time, where we're using value underneath and then translucently painting up the color. Here we're going to be translucently bringing up the value. So we're going to get our makeup brush, which acts as a pretty decent dry brush, and load it up and dry it off. And we've got this extra funky Kitbash here. We're just gonna see what happens when I give it a little bit of a smacking. Might turn out well, this might turn out horrible. We won't know until we give it a try. And the worst case scenario, we really don't like how this turns out, we just paint right over it. We strip the paint off and start again. Come on, Merlin. People attending college are still basically kids. They're like 18 to 21. Now, I'm pretty sure I can tell already that that's going to come out a bit too white for my tastes. We're going to end up having to redo it, but means we can take what paint we've already got here, thin it down even more with the translucent medium and try it on another model. Oh dear, what spicy things are you drawing, Marlin? Is it Patrocles again? Can't say I'm familiar with those two, but sounds spicy. Yeah, so this came out with a little bit of like a frosted snow effect, so I think it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. But the nice thing is, since this is actually only base coated, is we can just come back in with our wash, which I'm actually going to thin out a little bit more with Flow Improver, just to really get it going. Just going to dull it down again. Bring out the shadows and details a little bit more. And then we're just going to go back over it with our thin red paint again. I think it'll just keep adding into that detail a bit more. It's one thing we do have to remember about paint. It is translucent and it builds upon itself. Sometimes it just takes many layers of paint to get to the final place you want it to be. I think that's true of life too. Sometimes you gotta make mistakes, sometimes you've gotta do things that don't look right at the beginning. You just keep on layering on those experiences, layering on all that you do, and eventually you'll get to the place you want it to be. I think a lot about all of the mistakes that I've made up to this point in my life, and really how if I had never made those mistakes, I don't think I'd be where I am now, and I'm pretty happy with where I'm at these days. All those mistakes must have been worth something. So yeah, this guy kinda came out a bit weird, but we still got this red on our palette. I just hit it with a little bit more of our translucent medium to thin it out. Gonna go back over the areas that we want to be a little bit more red. Bring it back to the color. We'll see some of that white and that black fade away as we reapply what we really want. But we'll still get a little bit of that black and white underneath. That will add texture and detail aspects to this guy that will still show through and still make him look nice. Kind of make it look like, you know, he's got a little bit of battle damage going on. Thanks for stopping by, Merlin. I hope you have a good rest of your night there. Drive safe getting home. And if I don't catch you Saturday, I hope I catch you in Desert Bus chat. Anybody who's not following Merlin, she streams from time to time. She's also an amazing artist. She did the background for my stream setup here. She's just in general a wonderful human being. So maybe even look her up on her Etsy and her whatchamacallit, Coffee and Patreons and all that good stuff. Maybe get a commission done from her. Because she's pretty great. We should support the artists we like. Because what's life without a little bit of art to keep us sane? It's a perfect time to say such nice things. I mean, second only to saying it to her face so that she gets super blushy and tries to deny all of it. As you do. And of course there's Patch Witch here, who I just kind of made a mod for the heck of it. She runs a fairly frequent stream where she does various crafts such as quilting and crochet and Pokemon randomizer runs. So if anybody's not following her yet, some of you from Fenn's community, maybe give her a follow. She's good people. She contributed the Evolution Shaker Charms to Desert Bus this year, and they're going up as a silent auction at the same time as mine, but the day before. And I am disappointed that they are not a giveaway, so I cannot try and get them myself, because the auctions go for a bit more money than my wallet will let me, but It's all for the kids, and hopefully they raise a lot. Now, the one little problem with layering paint is that it is very hard to bring things lighter, especially when you're working in translucence and additive processes. Things like to trend towards blacks and browns you add to them. I don't think I'm gonna bring up the highlights too well, but I think he's actually not looking too bad even with the little flub ups we had there. I think the grunge is really shining. What do you think, chat? You think this guy looks like he fights on the side of chaos, wants to bring war and rivers of blood flowing throughout the galaxy? Think he wants to see it all burn because there's a dead emperor on the throne of humanity and it's all just pointless? I think he fits that mold pretty well. Just gonna de-shrimp myself real quick. And I think we're actually coming up to the end of the stream here. Yeah, we're just a little bit before, just a little bit before 8. So I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sign off for the night. Thank you all for joining me for another night of painting. Hopefully I'll see some of you this Saturday morning right before Desert Bus begins for a little bit of final painting. And let's see, let's throw you over to Unarmed Oracle or Cam there. He's good people. He looks like he's playing some Civ 6 right now. And if you don't want to join, that's fine. But hope you all have a good rest of your night. Do something good for yourself. Do something good for others. And don't forget your meds. Talk to y'all later.